the 6th of March, Rabbi Furst, Mishna Berura.
Lou, I wanted to ask you a question. Well, if you have a second.
Study. And okay, let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Sif Dalit. We'll start with Sif Dalit. Good morning again. This is Rabbi Shlomo Peter Kamanowski, our second show in the morning. We're learning Mishna Berura, Hilchos Megilla, and Tafresh Sadi Sif Dalit. Something which might be relevant. Let's take a look. Eliezer Tzvi, would you like to read?
Sure. Misha Tovas Biyoda Megillah She'eno Keshera. Somebody who's holding in his hand a Megillah that's not kosher. Lo Yikra Im Shliach Tzibur. He doesn't read with the Shliach Tzibur. El Shomea V'Shosek. He just listens and is quiet.
Okay. Let's see the Ramah. Let's see the Ramah as well.
V'chein lo Yisayeh Shum Adam al Peh L'Chazan. And similarly, nobody should say along with the chazan.
Right, like siur, like to help. No person should help the chazan al pet to, like, to, I guess, say the chaz to help this chazan say. That's what you see very commonly by Birchas Torah and by his Kriyas Torah and the Haftorahs. The people will say to help the shots, they'll say it underneath the breast and give him a little bit of a running start, and that helps him just keep the momentum going. But here with the Megillah, you shouldn't do that, apparently.
And therefore, those psukim that the call says aloud, then the Shliach Tzibur has to repeat those psukim from a kosher Megillah.
Right. So this is very relevant to what we do. Let's see the Mishna Berura in starting in Sif Katan Yud Gimel.
Yud Gimel. Lo Yikra, you shouldn't read from a non-kosher Megillah. The Shema Yitain Hashemea Liba Lezeh V'Korei V'Lo L'Shliach Tzibur, because maybe he's going to read it by heart and he'll rely on his own reading and not that of the Shliach Tzibur. Lefi Tam Zeh, because of this reason, Im Korei Rak Adam Echad, if he's only reading for one person, Roshai Lekroch Im HaKorei Mitok Megillah Pesula O Mitok HaChumash, then it's possible to read along with the Shliach Tzibur with a Pasul Megillah or out of a Chumash itself. But those who are machmir about that, we call Gavne in all cases, Levishinotin Daito, Vikrioso Ve'eno Mashkiach Lama Lama She'omer Hashliach Tzibur Kivin Shehu Asuk B'Kriyasa. I guess the person is not paying attention to the Shliach Tzibur because he's reading it himself.
Right. Very good. Very good.
Okay, Yudalid.
Yeah.
Lo Yisaya V'chu, you shouldn't help him. Gam Kain Mitam Hanal. The reason appears to me, V'ayin Be'elia Rabba.
Well, the reason is, as we said before, as we mentioned previously, that person may inadvertently pay attention to what's being read from the non-kosher source and lose out on what's being read from the kosher source.
V'ayin Be'elia Rabba, the Mitzad Gam B'zeh Lahachmir Afilu V'shekori Lahotzi Yachid. And you should also see in the Elia Rabbah, who's also machmir even when he's reading for just one other person. The Shem Yitin.
Yes.
The Shem Yitin Daito Lama Shekore Baal Peh, because perhaps he was end up reading it Baal Peh, Ba'asma by himself, B'toch Kach, and because of this, Yishtamit Mimenu Kama Tevos Shikore Shliach Tzibur. He's going to miss
he'll
some of the
he'll
words that the Shliach Tzibur is saying.
right, because he's going to be concentrating on either something about peh or something that's being read from a non-kosher source. Right, and that means that part of his reading has been coming from a non-kosher source, either about peh, which is puzzle, or non-kosher Megillah, which is puzzle. So therefore, if he's reading, he must read from a kosher Megillah, or hear from a kosher Megillah.
An interesting question just occurred to me. Does that mean if you are stam listening to the Balkore read the Megillah, is it better for you to be following in a chumash because you know you're not going to try and read from it as opposed to from a Megillah?
So reading from a chumash, that's going to be part of this question over here. You're asking that is really one of the central questions about this halacha, because really a chumash is not a kosher Megillah. So the question is, following along is advisable to follow along. First of all, it helps your attention. Also, if you miss out a word. So we'll see about what if a person misses out a word and he's reading from a non-kosher source, he's reading from a chumash, for example. But that'll be discussed. But ideally, you're supposed to read from a kosher Megillah. That's why many people, you don't see this except on Purim, that many people have their own kosher Megillahs that they come to.
Right, but they're not reading. They're not doing
Right.
the reading.
Exactly, they're not reading. But one thing is that if for some reason let's say they don't hear a word from the Shliach Tzibur, so if they are reading along, even if they're just primarily, basically, they're not even reading. But if they would be in a situation where they seemingly either definitely missed the word from the Shliach Tzibur, or they thought they missed the word from the Shliach Tzibur, so they could immediately read those words in the kosher Megillah, and that would be as if they are reading it themselves, and they would be Yotzi. Whereas if they would, let's say, be in such a situation, then they had to be without that, then they would be lacking those words, and that would actually require them under many circumstances to go through the previous Megillah all over again.
But they wouldn't be reading the whole Megillah themselves. They'd just be reading and
Right. It's not necessary that we read the whole Megillah themselves, because really except for the words they missed out or didn't hear, they heard everything else from the Shliach Tzibur. And then really almost instantaneously, if they see that, if there was a kid next to him, and after everyone quieted down from banging on him, and this guy blew off his cap pistol 2 or 3 times, and he lost 2 or 3 words in the reading. So if he understood what to do, he reacted quickly enough, he could read those words from his own kosher Megillah, and that would be in place of the Shliach Tzibur reading the words for him. That's what the Mishnah Berura had advised in 1 second. If you go back to Tuf Reish Peitet, the last 5th cutting there in Yud Tet, Tuf Reish Peitet, the last 5th cutting Yud Tet, Mikra Megillah. You have it there. Va'akshav. What the Mishnah Berura says in that 5th cutting, that Yud Tet.
Va'akshav roy l'chol echad shielo Megillah kashera. Okay, likro lachash mila b'mila. Okay, very good.
But I thought it didn't have to be kosher.
Well, to follow along, it does not have to be kosher. But if you're going to try, and if you're going to find it necessary to make up words that you didn't hear from the Shliach Tzibur, so that brings you to this point over here. If you're reading from a non-kosher Megillah, so then you're not getting all your words of the Megillah from a kosher source. Right? And we see here you have to have all your words from the Megillah either read to you from a kosher source or you reading it to you for yourself from a kosher source.
Well, okay, so tell me if this is this is wrong, that the practice that I don't remember exactly how I developed it, but somehow I developed the practice that whenever they stop for Haman, for the word Haman, so
Right.
I yell out very quickly, a very short, boo, Haban, whatever. And then while everybody else is still banging around, I read the next 3 or 4 words, and that's to protect me in case when he starts reading, I don't hear the first couple of words because like you said, somebody near me blows off a capsule, a pistol, then
Right.
I'm covered. So is that incorrect? Because I'm reading from a chumash.
Right, but I mean, in general, you're probably going to hear the words from the Shtei Tzibur. What they're doing is like just sort of being extra cautious.
Right.
Whether or not that'll be a question of b'diavad. If for some reason you didn't hear those words, and the only words you had to rely on were the words you were reading from the Chumash, so that would be a question b'diavad, what you would have to do in that case. I'm not sure if let's give the Mishnah a few more lines here, and we'll see what the Mishnah has to say. Well, there are other sources of halach we have to see as well on this point. We'll eventually clarify it in terms of your case. What would be the evid if you read from an unkosher source?
Okay, Tesvav.
Yeah.
Okay. L'chein osan hapsukim. Therefore, these psukim. Rotzon wants to say kamo sham. The machmirin shalo yisaya al peh. They don't read them by heart. The al yidei zeh yitnu kama anashim daitam lishmoa mizeh hamasaye b'korei al peh. There are people who recite these psukim bal peh.
Right.
Okay. The emes sorech likrosa lechatchila kula min haksav, but they really should be reading them from the ksav. Gam kain gam bezeh tzorech hachazan lachzer likrosam mitoch Megilla kashera. Even on these, the chazan has to go back and read them from kosher sefer, kosher Megillah. V'heim yikavnu letzeit b'kriyaso k'dei sheyeh kulo mitoch haksav. And your intention should be for that you're fulfilling the mitzvah from the ones that the chazan is reading, so that everything is coming from ksav.
So see, if you pay attention to what the Mr. Berura said over here, it says he said it this toward the beginning that the al yedei zeh yitu kama nashim daitam lishmoya mizeh amasaye kora al peh, right? And he says this is the point. The emes tzorech lekrosak lekatila kula mina kasav. That's the likatila. You see that word, Roy? Excuse me, Lou. Likatila.
Yes.
So he's telling you this is the din lechatchila. Now, what is the din bidi evid? If you heard it not from a kasav, that's a question bidi evid. Okay. That's a question bidi evid. So that we haven't gotten to what's the halacha if this happened bidi evid that you didn't hear a certain amount of words not from a kasav, from a kosher kasav. Right. So we'll have to get to that. Have to get to that stage in the halakha sooner or later, Bezisha.
Is this a situation where someone's laning the Megillah and then he starts to do it from memory?
No, that's a similar situation. That's a similar situation where he's doing from memory. That in that case, it wouldn't be valid. Would not be except I mean, we had cases earlier in the first sif that if the Megillah was lacking certain words and he did it bal peh, right? We had those cases already. Again, that's the question b'diavad. That's also b'diavad. All these points right now are what we're talking about is the katfila. This is the ideal situation. Okay, let's
Okay,
continue on.
Tesvav, Tzarech l'chazan, the chazan needs, Hainu l'chadchila, that's l'chadchila, that he has to go back and read them. We have to read them.
1 second. Okay, good. So you see the Mishnah was emphasizing the point that these things are the tzatchila.
Okay. Continue, Mishnah in the
That was-
Shulchan.
Yeah,
Kara Surugim, the Hainu Shapasuk Ba Vishav Akacha Chazer Vikom HaPasuk. That it's in kind of an interrupted reading where you read a pasuk and then you wait and then you read the next pasuk. So it's not really flowing. A few shakadei more s kulo. Even if you waited long enough to complete reading the whole Megillah during that break, yotza, you still fulfilled your obligation. Agava afilu sach b'neim. Even if you spoke between them during the hafsekim, umihu gorin b'mi v'sacha b'nehem. That
even if you would speak in between the two, all right?
okay.
Me with Gorin, however, Gorin, you shout at someone. You should shout Gorin b'misha sokbena. You should quiet a person down who is speaking. You find people speaking in the middle of you could even apparently speak out to tell them to quiet down.
Okay, come on, Simon, tough Reish, Tzadik Beis, Sif Beis. You'll see in further on. Okay.
All right. Very good.
Okay, Yud Zion in the Mishnah Berura, Afilu Shah Kadei Ligmor Es Kula, even if you wait long enough in order to complete the whole Megillah. What someone wants to say, I want to say, Shahai Yachol, Bizman Hazeh Ligmor Kol HaMegillah Merosh Ad Sof, from the beginning until the end. Yatsa, you still fulfilled your obligation. Ubisha Machmas Ones, and if you have to interrupt it because of some sort of an onus happening, Lafi Madakaima Lon Lael Simmons Samachay, as we explained above in Simmons Samachay, Leinian Kriyas Shema, the Choser LaRoche, where when the Kriyas Shema you have to go back until the beginning, then Hacha Choser V'Kur, but here you just continue reading. You certainly don't make a blessing on the continuation. It goes to what we wrote over there in the Bir Halacha.
Okay, very good.
Even if you talked, but Salomer, the lav dafka b'shah b'shtika, that you have to be, it's not required to be silent during these breaks. Elafilu pasku be'emtsa hamegillah b'sicha shu al yedei zeh. But if you interrupt or there's a break in the reading because of something relevant to the Megillah, anami ain't sark hazar ella gomer malcolm shapasak, but you're still allowed to continue. I guess this would be like the case of like you're correcting the Balkore. So you stop the reading, you have to go back and fix something. Then you just continue from where you are. You certainly don't have to go back to the beginning.
Right, that's a very good example. Yeah, very good. Thank you. That's good.
Okay.
That would be when people are using the groggers and at the wrong time. So then you have to go back, make sure everybody heard it.
That would also be a good example, that you had to make a interruption because people couldn't
But
control.
but you don't have to go back to the beginning of the Megillah. You just go back, a couple of words.
Yeah, the words that were left out exactly weren't
Right.
heard.
Okay. V'chol zeh, kishasach hakore. This is all these is when the Balkore has to interrupt. Aval hashomea shasach v'lo shema al yidei hakriya, but a one who's listening and has a break and he doesn't hear the words. I feel achas, even he's only missing one word. Das kama poskim delo yotze. Many poskim say that the listener is not yotze. Well, kain tzarich gadol liot l'chol echad chumash. There, it's a requirement that everybody should have a chumash. Ki ba'od shemakin hanaarim haman ukiyose, where people are clapping haman and other interruptions. Yefshel shmoa kama tevos mishliach sir. It's possible to not hear some of the words from the shliach sibor. Yotze masha kore al kol panim bechumash. But your Yotze going to, if you read those words for the Chumash, everybody says your Yotze. I'll call upon him Di'evid, in a Di'evid situation.
You see, Lou, this is the answer to your question, right?
So it said that if you have trouble hearing because of the noise, then you can read it from the Chumash, but only B'di'evid.
Right. It's
Right.
if you're gonna read it from the Chumash, which is not a kosher Megillah, so you're Yotze B'di'evid, right? So therefore, that's why they try and bring their own Megillas with them, so they be Yotze Yilid Chadchila.
So it says li'os lechol echad chumash. So that's saying that it's advisable to everybody should have a chumash.
As opposed to nothing. As opposed to nothing.
Right.
But
Meaning-
why doesn't it say it's advisable that everybody should have a kosher Megillah and B'di'evid?
It said that already. It said that it said that earlier in the last sif.
I missed that. Where did it say that?
That was in
Well,
Yud
anyway,
Tes.
even if it did say it there, why doesn't it say it here?
No, again, if you go back to Yud Tes, Sifkat and Yud Tes in the previous in Tuf Reish Tzadi Pei is a Mikra Megillah. Aksav Roy Lekol Echad Megillah Keshera. It's fitting. It's proper. I mean, again, a fairly good kosher Megillah could probably run anywhere from $500 to $1,000. Okay, it's not a simple expense, right? Not a simple expense. It's a fairly nice amount of money. And so the Mishnah Berura can't obligate you to buy a kosher Megillah, but he said it's fit. If a person has the means, it's definitely advisable to have a kosher Megillah. But he's saying it's befitting that a person does have a kosher Megillah. If a person doesn't, so he should definitely be reading along and have a chumash or something else there, which is a correct text of the Megillah. And therefore, if he does happen to miss out on a word or two or whatever from the shots because of whatever reason, so he'll be Yotzi, but it'll be Yotzi of B'di'evid. It won't be L'Tzatzila. Whereas if he has the kosher Megillah, he'll be Yotzi L'Tzatzila. So that's why you see, you don't see this any other time, but people would prefer if they have the means to be there with them a kosher Megillah.
You also have the situation, if you're reading from a cloth, which does not
Right.
have nakudos,
Right.
you might not be, and you have to read a word, you might not be sure of the correct pronunciation.
You're
But
right.
if you
you're
read
right.
from the Chumash with nakudos, you know you're going to pronounce the word correctly when you read it.
Right. That all depends on the skills of the person who's listening. Very good point, Elias. If the person's not going to be able to, and then some of the words in the Megillah are not easy at all, right?
Right.
It's not easy at all, and because a lot of it in a language which is not, it's not, to a certain extent, it's classical Hebrew, but some words are incorporated from earlier times than what we are familiar with. So yeah, so a person in that case, it could be preferable to read from a Chumash and be at least Yotzi B'diavad, whereas if he would try and read it from a kosher Megillah, he may not pronounce the words properly himself and may not be Yotzi at all. Right.
I also find that sometimes if I lose my place, I can use the English to help me figure out where they are.
Right.
And find my place again.
Right.
With the kosher Megillah, I'd be stuck.
Yeah. Right. Again, you are very true. Also a very good point. You're right. Sometimes, the Megillah takes a good 30, 40 minutes to read, and sometimes a person's mind wanders. And as you said, if you can spot it through the English, then you'll be able to pick up right away again. Whereas if it's a Megillah, and also to note, since you're dealing with a Megillah which was written on cloth, and we're not used to dealing with parchment, right? So just the mechanical handling of the Megillah is a little bit difficult sometimes.
Right.
Depending,
I was
depending
thinking
on
that
the,
also, yeah.
depending on the size of the Megillah, depending on are you sitting at a table, is it standing at a stender? So so that also that can be distracting as well. So yeah, the person has to be wise and to take all these situations into consideration to know what's best for him. Yeah.
But it is possible if you don't have a kosher Megillah and someone, not the reader, but someone else comes in with one, wouldn't it be advisable to try and read it along with him?
Yeah, sure.
To join him?
Many people share their Megillahs. Yeah, of course. It's very common people share their Megillahs with other people. Sure. Yeah. Right. Very good. Also a good point. Well, okay. I think that brings us to let's say I tell you, we just have let's
We have a line to fit. We have a line to finish it.
Yeah, let's finish the line. Very good, Eliezer.
Let me go in V'chulu. The Kavan Berach Alecha. You've already made the blessing. Ein lahafsik beinehem ad la'achar kol hamitzvah. What's he saying?
That you should quiet these people down. You should let these people. That further the public here.
Okay.
Right. As is even finished the Berura Aleha, Ein Lo, the Hafsik time Atachar and Kol HaMitzvah. The one because the one who was reading, he was the one who made the bracha. So it's not really fit for him to make the one.
Okay. Very good.
So we're starting with Vav tomorrow, Vav?
Yes, Bez Hashem. I think we'll start with Vav.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you
Okay,
all.
we will.
Thank you.